She's modest, but this is her book.
Eddie.
Excellent.
I didn't see who was talking. Okay. Hi, Eddie. Eddie invited me. Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right.
my
I'm gonna
brother.
go back. I gotta come back, yo.
You ready, Mr. Bell?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Everybody get on mute until we call you. We're gonna kick it off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Sunday Zoom. My name is Gary Johnson. I'm the founder of BlackMenInAmerica.com and your facilitator for today. Without any ado, I'm going to introduce you to our host. He is the 2020 National Association of Black Journalists Pioneer Award winner. He's also a sports radio icon in Washington, D.C. and a Washington, D.C. native. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Harold Bell.
All right, thank you, Gary. And right, I'm Harold Bell, and this is Zoom Sunday, and so it must be Speak the Truth. Let us not forget, it is also Women's Month history. You know, Women's History Month. That's what this is. We just left Black History Month, so we're now into Women's History Month. So I guess that means all women. So today's show is part 2 of Justice and Just Us. We have a video, but we're having a problem with our sound. Gary, you want to try that? Can't hear you now. Mute, unmute yourself. Okay. All right, this is Donovan Mitchell meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris. They're meeting to talk about, of course, social justice and community policing. They're in an airport hangar somewhere in the country. We don't know exactly where it is, but Donovan Mitchell is going into his 3rd year as an NBA player. He's one of the young superstars. My cousin from on one side of the tree or not, but he's a cousin of mine, and he's meeting with Kamala Harris. And of course, a lot of people trying to figure out why is Donovan Mitchell meeting with Kamala Harris? What are the big boys, LeBron James, who's supposed to be all about the social media thing? But what I see is it's a great move for Donovan Mitchell, and I don't know what they're planning on doing as far as community policing is concerned. But we take a look at it. That's what we could be talking about today as we talk about justice and just us. Okay, Gary, you can get on out of there. On Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, the House passed a bill titled the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. George Floyd, as all of you know, was the Black brother in Minnesota who was murdered in broad daylight, much like Eric Garner in New York City, who was choked to death by a New York City cop for selling loose cigarettes. Now, the cop in Minnesota had his knee on George's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And much like Eric Garner, he also was heard saying, "I can't breathe." Now, special guest today, I want my brother Sidney Davis to introduce our special guest. All right, Sidney, unmute yourself. You gotta unmute yourself.
Charles Hopkins is the guest for today from the National Action Network. I mean, a couple of months ago, about 10 guys got together at Suitland High School. Charles Hopkins was one of the brothers. He is very distinguished and one of those founders for the John R. Lewis National Action Network, Prince George County. Mr. Hopkins is a very smart brother, very thorough, keeps his word, got backbone. He is the current president for the Prince George County John R. Lewis chapter. And Mr. Hopkins will explain in detail a little more, but I want you to know that he is a brother of character, he keeps his word, and he's of sound principle.
Charles, welcome to Speak the Truth. We'll get right back to you. I want to introduce our second guest. He is a journalist, an author, a lecturer, He is a founding member of the Organization of African American Unity. The organization was founded by Brother Malcolm X in 1964. He was also the editor of the OAAU newsletter, Blacklash. He was also a pallbearer for Malcolm X's funeral. He is the author of Witnessing Brother Malcolm X, the Master Teacher. And he is the co-author of The Seventh Child, a family member of Malcolm X. He has lectured on Malcolm X at over 35 colleges and universities across America. He will be looking back on the life and times of Malcolm X. Right now, I want to kick it off. I want to say, Peter Bailey, welcome to Zoom Sunday and Speak the Truth. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I want to kick the show off with Charles Hopkins. I want to ask Charles Hopkins to tell us about this Action Network, because it's named after somebody that I know 90% of us respect, John Lewis. Tell us about what you guys are planning on doing in Prince George's County, Mr. Hopkins.
Thank you very much, and thank you, the panel, for allowing me to come to give y'all some insight into what we're doing with the John R. Lewis National Action Network chapter, Prince George's County. As Sidney said earlier, we did an overview of Prince George's County, and we seen back in the summer of last year that it was a lot of things going on in the county that wasn't reflective of the civil rights movement and what civil rights was all about. So we decided to establish a chapter of the National Action Network. By then, John R. Lewis had not passed away. Once we got to a point where John R. Lewis had passed away, we said, well, this would be a good name to take. The reason why we took his name is because John R. Lewis represented what civil rights is all about. John R. Lewis represented, and we talking about women's history, John R. Lewis represented what Johnny Carr was all about, Fannie Lou Hamer was all about. These sisters that was in Selma, Alabama, and was instrumental in the Montgomery bus boycott. So John R. Lewis represented them in that regard. We decided that we would take up the mantle of doing that in Prince George's County. We recognize that Prince George's County, although it's predominantly Black, we recognize that that don't mean nothing in terms of whether or not your civil rights are being violated. Your civil rights can be violated by anybody of any color. The civil rights was not an issue of color, it was an issue of equity and an issue of your rights as a human being being protected. So we decided that we would get this chapter together, which we had, it's embryonic, and we decided that what we would do, after we got organized, we came up with 10 points program to identify issues in PG County or anywhere that reflects violation of civil rights. And we recognize that now in Prince George's County, the biggest thing that we recognize in Prince George's County is no budget equity. That when the monies come out, the money is not being distributed equally to all the communities. We recognize that in Prince George's County, it's a nepotism system that's going on, and the nepotism is in the form of homeboys and homegirls. So the nepotism is based on you my man, you my sister, you my friend. I'm gonna let you get the bulk, the lion's share of the contracts, and the persons that small business, minority business can't get the contracts because they're not a part of the network. We was meeting with the Ethiopian community, and they was telling us that they trying to get a contract to expand their parking lot, and they was told that they got to find somebody that knows somebody that can get somebody to help them. Basically saying like, you don't know nobody, you don't know whose pocket you can rub, you don't know no pocket you can fill up. So we're John R. Lewis, National Action Network, chapter Prince George's County, is here to serve notice on the county. One last point before I'll turn it back over to you. Mm-hmm. We're in the process of developing a report card for all elected officials in PG County. We're in the process of identifying what their responsibilities are and how they vote on bills, and how they vote on issues relative to the community. This report card that we're developing is at the end of the day, when it comes time for them to run for office, then we're gonna let their record reflect what they did and what they didn't do, and we're gonna educate the community about that. We're a community, we call ourselves civil rights visionaries. And when you look at the National Action Network, the National Action Network say that to keep the dream of Dr. King alive. So we say that if Dr. King had a dream, then we envision what his dream would be like in 2021. What his dream would be like in 2021, he would have been up on the hill with George Floyd. What his dream would be like in 2021, he'd be out here talking about why you don't have equity in the COVID distribution. If his dream was, if he's here today, he would be saying like, well, why is it that the police budget is so larger than the school budget? This is what his dream would be. This is what his vision. So we envision this, and we seek to imply or implement his dream through our vision, and our vision is reflected in our 10 points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Charles. First, I want to do, I forgot to do this again, but I want to introduce my team because they are the most important part of the show. I want to introduce, of course, Jackie Jones. Jackie Jones has been a part of Inside Sports, this network, and everything I've been doing in the community for 40 plus years. She's a pioneer as far as a writer with the Washington Post. She's written for the Baltimore Sun, the New York Post, and she is now the Assistant Dean of Communications at Morgan State University. I want to welcome, of course, Jackie to the show. Also joining us is my longtime friend, a pioneer when it comes to sports talk shows and radio talk shows out of Kansas. She was the first female to have her own sports talk show in Kansas, and then came to Washington, D.C. to WTTG Channel 5, where she was the first Black female sportscaster. She has had a show on Sirius XM radio for a number of years. She's an actress. You name it, she does it all. And I'm talking with my friend, Miss Maggie Linton. How you doing, Maggie? Good to see you. Okay. Also joining us is the young guy in this group. We call him CJ. He's a youth advocate. He's a sports advocate. He knows what's going on in politics, and we learn a lot from CJ with this show. So I would like to welcome the one and only Chris Johnson. Also joining us is my community advocate, Juanita Bright. She has been with us for a number of weeks, and she's come on, intricate part of the show. She's a senior advocate. She's out in the community, in DC, PG County, you know, she's walking the walk. She's not just talking talk. Thanks for coming on, Juanita. Thanks for being on the show. Also, a young man that has been in this area for a number of years, a native Washingtonian, a writer, a very distinguished writer for the Washington Post. I would like to welcome, see that he has taken time out to be on the show today, Mr. Eddie Sargent. Eddie, thank you for taking time out to be here. Also, we got my friend who's been in the struggle, man, for a number of years. The things that he has been able to bring to this program with the Black farmer has been phenomenal. To watch that struggle and watch to see where it has come today. He is the president of the USDA and the arm that's really been out front in the battle for the Black farmer all over this country. He's going to bring us some good news later on. He has a letter that he wants to read us that I found very exciting. My teammate and former Spingarn High School buddy, Mr. Lawrence Lucas. Lawrence is with us today. Okay, let me see who else we got here. Oh, my man, Jacques Chevalier. I told Jacques on this show today, man, you missed your coming. You should be in Hollywood. You should be on the big screen. Jacques is a native Washingtonian. He's a businessman. Been out in the community all his life. He's one of those guys that you call that's been in the struggle. Not, like I said, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. Let's see. Anybody else? I want everybody else who I have not even visited. Please introduce yourself. Let's go up here in the corner to Nanette. She is Nanette. Tell us who you are and why you here. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And Sidney, thank you for inviting me. I've just been hanging around PG County since 2003. I have been working, I'm going to say somewhat silently, as an advocate for homeowners in terms of foreclosure, because I discovered that there were several things that we weren't aware of. So that's what I am bringing to the show today, and I wanted to share that with everyone.
Okay. I think, I'm not sure, in the left-hand corner, is that Michael? Michael, is that you in the left-hand corner down there? Michael Jackson, who is that? In the left-hand corner. Michael, you in the dark.
Yeah, I'm in my hotel room, but I'm on the show. And
okay, that is you, huh, Michael?
yeah.
Okay, Michael is a U.S. District Attorney in Alabama, and Michael was on the show last week, and I invited him back with an open invitation to bring us up to date on what that bill means that the House just passed as far as concerned with George Floyd. So we'll get back to Michael. Also, I want to introduce over here in the right corner. Yeah, baby, right there, to put the pretty hat on.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Nkechi Taifa. I'm a native Washingtonian, and I'm glad to join you all. I was invited by Eddie. I don't know exactly what this is, but I saw Peter Bailey. I'm kind of like a Peter Bailey groupie, so I said, yeah.
Okay.
That's what it's about. Thank you.
That's great. Also, my man Sidney Davis has been we've been out in the streets and been in the war zones for a number of years. A guy that calls it exactly like he sees them, and we are blessed. We are blessed to have Sidney Davis here. He's going to be an intricate part of the program, and I want to once again welcome Sidney Davis.
Thank you, Harold.
You're
gonna have to extend this time we have. An hour ain't gonna be enough to cover all the information that folks have.
Don't worry, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out.
Gary stir it up.
The lady of India right under Sydney. Tell us who you are. India.
Linda, talking to you, Linda.
Unmute.
You got unmute yourself. Unmute.
Okay, I just did. Hello, you guys. My name is Linda Mercer. I am a retired WMATA employee, and I have been an advocate for wrongful terminations, discrimination, sexual harassment in the workplace. And also I am a PG County, longtime PG County resident. Lost my son to a stray bullet. So I am an advocate for reaching out to other mothers that have lost children. PG County does not have a lot of programs like DC do. When it comes to that, that's a monkey within itself, because not only do you deal with the loss of a loved one, but you deal with depression of the siblings. That is something that is not taught of how to deal with that depression, because when these kids lose their other siblings, it takes a toll on them, and it's hard on them, especially when they're at school age.
Okay, so we're gonna get right back to you. We will have you come back. What I want to do right now, I want to switch from, of course, Charles. I want to switch over to Peter, Peter Bailey. Peter, tell us about, this last week they celebrated, well, it wasn't no celebration. It was the 56th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, and his daughters showed up with a letter they wanted to read to the public about the assassination of their father. Peter, bring us up to date on that. Peter Bailey, are you there?
You say King or Malcolm?
Hello? Peter. Okay, I don't know what happened to Peter, but let's move on. I wanna make, I want somebody to especially one of the team members. Jackie, how about asking Charles about, a little deeper insight as far as, the Net Action Network, John Lewis Action Network, coming into PG County and trying to make a change, because they do need some changes. Jackie?
Sure. Mr. Hopkins, talk a little bit about what the John R. Lewis National Action Network chapter is doing in terms of police reform. I know that last summer there was a group of brown and black police officers in the county who put forward what they called a 12-point plan for police reform, and including a call for a residency requirement, some training to eliminate implicit bias and things like that. And what's happened since then? And are you interacting with Prince George's Police with that, or with Ms. Also Brooks, County Executive Also Brooks' office, in terms of trying to force some change?
We're basically right now, we're looking at the landscape to determine just where we want to set our shop up. Like I told you, we embryonic. We just came into existence in we came into existence in September. That's when we got our official recognition. We at the end of the month. So right now, in terms of our perspective on the police, I can give you our perspective of what we think about the police and what should be going on with the police. And our belief is that more community involvement and more community oversight of the police is necessary. We believe that when the Black Panther Party came into existence, they didn't come into existence with guns to say that they was out there to like monitor the police. They came into existence. That was one of the points on that 10-point platform program, to monitor the behavior of the police. Our position is, and one of our points is that we say to monitor and expose reports of police brutality everywhere. This is one of our points, to monitor and expose police brutality everywhere. So in terms of, if that issue was at the forefront right now in PG County, in terms of somebody, like an issue took place and somebody made us aware of it, then we would mobilize around that issue and educating the public about the police and what they need to do. But our goal right now is to try to mobilize the community to get them to see what the role the police should be playing in their community. Like certain communities got a heavy presence of police in it, and you got a heavy presence of police in it because you dub that community a high crime area. But then in other areas, you don't have a heavy presence of the police. But then when something going on in the community, you don't give the community the benefit of saying like, what, have a voice in it. You just come in and do what you do, lock people up, send them to detention center, and that's the end of the story. So in response to your question, we're evaluating all issues that's in PG County, and that is one of them.
Okay. Michael Jackson, as a U.S. attorney, the decision that the House made as far as paying tribute to George Floyd and passing this police Reform Act, what does that mean? Where do we go from here? Where do they go from here, Michael? As a U.S. attorney sitting in Alabama, what does that mean to you?
Well, one of the things I really like is the no-knock provision. I don't think police officers should be able to come to folks' houses without announcing who they are. Because if you, when you saw what happened in Kentucky with Breonna Taylor, if you knock on somebody's door at night or in the morning, and I mean, if you just break in somebody's home, the officer probably gonna get shot at. That's just the nature of the beast. So I don't like that. I think that's a good provision that officers shouldn't be able to just break into your house without announcing who you are. Of course, the provision also has no chokeholds. It deals with the immunity of police officers. Some places, it's almost impossible to sue the police department because of immunity that they have. And so it deals with that kind of thing. Now, I don't know if this bill is gonna pass the Senate though. Yeah. I just that's gonna be a harder thing to pass in the House.
Okay.
May I,
Go ahead, Sidney, go ahead. We'll go ahead, make it short.
when we're talking about, in retrospect, police were respectful in communities to the extent that the community knew the officers and there was a common respect amongst families and communities. You know, we talking this stuff, this minutia that's not applicable with the governing of communities and protection of families and kids in communities, because police are not being monitored according to community standards. It was community standard, it was removed. Why was it removed? When you have folk getting in rooms talking without the investment of the community at the table, certainly you're gonna have a quagmire that's gonna be perpetual, and these currents of racism are going to continue to metastasize. For example, you take Angela Also Brooks. Nobody is having a conversation about the destruction in communities. And if she has not experienced or lived in those kind of circumstances, she's not going to perpetuate that at the table. Take this brother right here that you just talked to in Alabama. If he's not at the table or he's not investing in communities to have input, we're going to continue to do what? Be destructive unto ourselves, because we're not allowed to have conversation about the very core things that impact the inequity and the inequality in communities. And if it's not being discussed, then it's not going to be done. It's not going to change. This is why Brother Hopkins has an experience. He has 49 laps in terms of years at that particular problem. But if you don't invite these experiences at the table, you feel neglected, you feel ousted, and kids don't have any representation at the table.
Okay. Jackie, Maggie, hold on, Maggie. Come on in, Maggie. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Okay, there you are.
I had unmuted myself, but I hadn't had my microphone on. I'm sorry. I think that there are problems all over the country, not just in Prince George's County. This bill needs to be as strong as it can be. I'm married to a police officer. I don't know if many of you all know that. You know, he was on the Baltimore City Police Department for 35.5 years. And in every department, there are good guys and bad guys. And it's getting rid of the bad guys and also retraining the ones that are there in order to better understand other people's plight and circumstances, and having them place themselves in that situation a little bit more realistically. A lot of the stuff that goes on a regular basis is the kind of thing that could be avoided if you just had people who cared, and they don't care enough.
Let me follow.
Hold on, Sidney. Let's try to get everybody. We'll get back to you. Eddie Sargent, your years at the Washington Post and being a part of the DMV, and as a reporter, tell us briefly, what do you see the problems are and where are we to go?
Thank you, Harold. I'm glad to be part of this great group again. Here it is. We are not being manly enough. I notice we have 9 men on the show today and 7 women. I'm not chauvinistic, but this is a man's struggle to take on. This is up to us. We are the primary targets, our families, our women, our children. We see them not being protected on TV. These videos, the little girl getting whipped up having a party, some kind of swimming party. I mean, this is a man's world. There's nothing without a woman. You believe that? This is a man's world, it's a man's struggle. So my question is, what is the most aggressive action we can take in our own self-defense? I'd like to direct that question, if you will, to the attorney, the state's attorney, I believe, the gentleman down on my
U.S. attorney, yeah. Michael, go ahead, Michael, he addressed that to you.
Yeah, I'm the district attorney down in Selma, 5 counties, but I agree with everything. And I can't remember her name, but the one married to the police officer,
Yeah,
everything you said,
Maggie.
yeah, there's a lot of good officers, but there's some bad officers, and the bad officers make the whole department look bad. And that's what police are gonna have to understand, that it's better to unite against that bad officer than to protect them. That's why I believe there's strong prosecution of officers that violate the law needs to happen. Uh, because it just makes the whole department look bad and it destroys the community. Uh, some of the Floyd Act things, really, we got to get rid of this no knock warrant, serving warrants where you don't knock and announce who you are. We just got to get rid of that. And things like the chokehold, that kind of thing, that needs to be gotten rid of.
I think I hear where you're coming from. I was talking about, I appreciate what you're saying. You're saying get more aggressive within the system. I'm thinking more of a grassroots piece, those who are not in the government, who are not at the tables of decision where those kinds of changes need and will happen. I'm saying, what can we bring from the community? What kind of pressure can we bring from the community against the government? So we may not have a seat at the table, but if we can block the whole table from anybody having a seat, I think that's the kind of aggressive action I'm thinking about. I just want to know what our thoughts are. How aggressive can and should we be? Nothing has worked.
I'm saying one of the instruments for that particular change is having information to vet the people who are at the table. If we are voting for somebody and we don't know their safety conditions, we don't know what their thinking is, and we vote for them out of a personality, we get what we vote for. We don't vet. We get the lady says she had Maggie says her husband is a policeman, and you get, as the Alabama attorney said, you got some good ones and some bad ones. But if no position is being taken and everything is continued to be metastasized to be that much more destructive, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about vetting folk before we position them to have care about our communities, about our families, about reentry. We ain't talking about nothing, so it's gonna grow out of proportion. And
Okay,
when we
Sidney,
begin to
hold on. Okay, Gary, your mom was a policeman in the DC Police Department. Where's your stand on this?
Yeah, I grew up in a family of police officers, and I ended up for a brief time being a federal special agent. Yeah, there are some bad ones. And even in where I've seen when I was an agent, there were some bad ones, and it takes a lot of courage to turn the bad ones in. And so I've been on the line where people have come to me about bad agents, and I turned them in. Didn't make me very popular, but but I knew it was the right thing to do. I had to take that kind of courage. So yeah, we got to get rid of the bad ones, and they're the ones like Maggie and the state's attorney said. They're really they get the most attention, and all the good ones are just struggling. And I know that I don't want to take too much time, but I know that Ms. Taifa, yeah, I know she wanted to say something, and I know probably CJ's bursting at the seams too.
Yeah, and John, we're gonna get to everybody. I'm gonna get to everybody. Taifa,
I got it.
Come on, then we'll get to Jacques, and then we'll get to a CJ, and then we'll get to a Lucas. Come on, everybody.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this conversation. I really think that we need to be bold. It's a situation where the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Of course, it's the issue of the filibuster in the Senate. But if the president were interested in really getting some real changes, the filibuster needs to be done away with, and he's not inclined to do away with the filibuster. We cannot also think that just because the name of our befallen brother George Floyd is on a bill that is the perfect bill. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was a negotiated bill that first started out when we did not control, the Senate. So it was negotiated. So in my humble opinion, I really wish the bill had been stronger once it became to a vote in the House, so that when it went over to the Senate, it would be as strong as possible. It does not totally eliminate no knock. It does not totally eliminate qualified immunity. It's only, partial. So that when it goes to the Senate, it's going to be watered down even further. I mean, much, 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 much further. If it even gets the opportunity at all. So I'm just saying, now is the time to go bold, to be bold, and to get as much. They didn't have any problems being bold when they were in power. I think we need to do so as well.
CJ, come on in, CJ.
I agree with everything that was just said. That's absolutely correct. It needs to be bold action, and right now it needs to come from grassroots in the community, because the Biden administration and the Senate and the House and congressional Democrats and Republicans have all signaled that they're not willing to do anything to help do anything. Like, they've just been awful. So it's not, and Biden is basically the nothing will fundamentally change president. So we can't wait upon them, because the Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the White House to expect anything to really change, because that's not what they're about. They're not about change. They're about blocking change. They're about resisting change. They're about saying the right things, but then voting like Republicans behind closed doors. So that's not the route. The route needs to come from the community. It needs to come from grassroots. The problem with the bad cops, the bad apples, and the good apples is they're all wearing the same uniform. And that erodes the trust of the community of the good cops. As you said, it ruins it for all of them. There are good cops that genuinely want to help the community, but when people's experiences are with the bad cops, and then a part of the cops' job, which is not all their fault, is to criminalize poverty and to lock people up for small amounts of weed and things like that, and jaywalking or whatever, speeding tickets. And we have a cash bail system that disproportionately lets rich people out of jail if you just have money, and poor people can't. So there's a lot of terrible things in our justice system that these bills are not going to address. They're going to get watered down. There's going to be a lot of bait and switch, just like everything that we've seen so far from our new Senate.
Jacques, come on in, Jacques.
I agree with very wholeheartedly what CJ just enumerated for us. That's a key point about the bail system that only helps the rich. We have people like Tommy Broadwater out here who's been prostituting the citizens of this state for years, and yet people go around, they kiss his butt and kiss his ring. And this guy, went to jail for food stamp fraud, taking advantage of Black people, been taking advantage of them for decades, still do. And for people, and then, to go around and still, pump this guy up, people like him, people like Aisha also, Brooks, who has the power now to make real change. We're not really seeing that. And I think the pandemic has really served a lot of these elected officials well. Because now, the public doesn't get out as much. They don't feel like they don't have to see you. You can't come out to the meetings and, confront them. And so I just want to say that, and I'll be quiet.
Okay, that's good. Lawrence Lucas, come on in, Lawrence. Unmute yourself, Lawrence.
Yeah, okay. I can't say I disagree with anything that's being said, but what I can add to it, and you've touched on it just slightly, seeing that I deal with civil rights in the workplace and for farmers and employees at USDA, and especially with Black farmers. I think the one thing that will make a difference in this environment, and that is to hold people accountable for the actions, for their actions. We can work all around the edges of the problem all day and all night, but as long as you allow those individuals, those police officers, those bad police officers to stain the other police officers that have our interests and our best interests in mind, you're not going to get any change. So one of the most important pieces, and people talk about we don't want to change anything dealing with police officers, and you hear the Republicans say it and Democrats say it too. You have to hold those individuals, those bad officers accountable. And until you get a system in place, and this is where the attorneys in these states and in these governments around the country that spend more time protecting these people, you have to hold them accountable. That is important.
Okay, Linda, I want to bring you back in because you lost a loved one because of gun violence. Take it up from there, Linda.
I'm gonna say, I like the fact that we talked about being bold. And one of the things about being bold, my son has been gone 14 years, and I lost contact with the detective that was working on it. So his case is basically a cold case. In PG County, remember they asked for a report from PG County. In the report, they asked to include how many people have been pulled over, motorists, how many brown people were pulled over, and you gave them a ticket versus the white people that was pulled over. Now, remember, PG County refused to give up this report. Last time I checked, I hadn't heard whether they gave it up. But why can't we be one of the first ones to create some form of maybe an app or something that's in it that everybody can access to give reports on, I was pulled over today, what your pullover was, not giving the person's name, but using badge numbers, and start bringing light and awareness where you will see a pattern of this same cop in this same area doing this to certain people, and put the onus back on the county to address this, because a lot of time we don't know the background of what these cops have done until something like the shooting that happened down in Oxon Hill, which you hear nothing else about. The guy handcuffed in the front seat, shot.
$20 million.
You haven't heard nothing else. You haven't heard nothing else
They had to
about
pay
that.
out $20 million, Linda. Juanita Bright, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to go by you. Juanita, come on in and take this up. And we'll be with Sidney. We're going overtime, Sidney. So don't worry about it. Come on, Juanita. Go ahead.
Hey everybody. So everything basically that I heard, I agree with. I have a couple of comments. One, there are a lot of small groups that organize and get together to address pieces of the puzzle. And unfortunately, in order to invest the time and energy that it takes to really communicate with the community about the concerns and things like that, and to generate information, it takes money. A lot of these groups that get together, and I don't know if that's the case with Charles, but a lot of these groups that get together only have a limited amount of resources, and they set up their groups to address certain issues, but it's all a part of a bigger puzzle, a bigger picture. Of course, I'm a grassroots person, so I'm always advocating for a way for information to get generated into the communities, to layman people, because you can't get people to get up and stand for something if they don't know nothing. And we can't operate in a place of emotion. We have to operate from the power of information. So that's the thing. I want to talk about the police, law enforcement. The reality of it is, and we all agree, is that we have good and bad officers. I too come from a family of police officers, and I know them personally. I know their makeup. But the reality of it is that yes, there's the good and the bad. But why is it that the bad can continuously stay, and we have to talk about that union? We have to talk about that powerful union that backs all of these police officers who are in the wrong, who get them off, who pay for their bail, who get them out of jail, who cut deals. That's the reality. That is a reality. And when you start messing with people and their money, it gets dangerous. So all of these things are taken into account, that I take into account. And it would be, can we all get along enough to put all these puzzles together and sit at the table and have a more unified way of dealing with, of hitting the problems from different directions, but in a unified way. The other thing I wanted to say is that when we vote for politicians, and I heard somebody say a lot of times we gung ho for supporting people based on their personality,
That's right.
based on their characteristics, or based on who, who's who and whose neighborhood. But once they get into office, usually, in my opinion, in my experience, they operate basically based on the people that are around them and the information that they're funneling to them. That's
Okay.
not to so
Okay.
that's not to negate the fact that there's other extenuating circumstances that get people to make decisions and do things. But yeah, so those are just my concerns. I love it when I come onto this panel and I hear all these different people that are doing some amazing things within the realm of what they can do. And so that's all I got.
Okay, guys, we're gonna go to 1:30, but let me say this. I want to hear everybody.
1:30.
Hold up. I want to hear everybody. I'm gonna come back to Nanette. I've been in this struggle for over 50 some years. And you talking about being bold. Nobody's been more bolder than me when it comes to fighting brutality, the racism, the thin blue line, the code of silence. Both of my brothers, served on the department. My brother Earl was a stand-up cop for 14 years, had to fight that same code of silence where he was sold out by another black chief, you understand? End up in an accident because they assigned him to the police and fire clinic for standing up to be a man. You understand? My brother Bob was a U.S. Marshal for 20 years. I was right there in the fight with him. I'm seeing all of this. But what we got to understand, man, is that we got to call these folks out. I done been down before the DC City Council calling out Peter Newsham, with him sitting right in the room, that he had no business being the police chief in DC. I gave Bowser, I gave Eleanor Holmes Norton, I gave Murray Che written information on this man's background, that he was nothing but a drunk, a woman abuser. I was right in front of the city council, man, and they still hired him. You cannot put that on Trump. It's our leadership that's killing us. Until we attack, Maggie said, yeah, it happens all over. But I'm dealing with what's happening right here in the DMV that I've been up close and been able to see that we are losing ground. Our kids are losing ground. So until we come forward and call out the FOP, which is the power base, who is the Ku Klux Klan. They're the Ku Klux Klan. They're the Ku Klux Klan all over this country. And we sit back and make excuses for Bowser. We make excuses for Arthur Brooks. Here she paid out $20 million to that cop that killed that brother sitting in the car with handcuffs on. He was deranged. He had no business on the force. Then she paid $13 million out to suppress the information on racism in the police department. That's $33 million could have gone to education. And I'm talking about, this is my friend's daughter. You understand? And I've tried to stay back, give them the benefit of the doubt. Eddie done called and tried to get Arthur Brooks on the show to talk about this. They won't even, they don't give us no play. You know why? Because we're not in the clique and we're not just going for anything. We're not just going, these cops are, man, they are hired assassins. They are hired assassins. And all you gotta do is saw what they did to that boy jaywalking in California. They assassinated him in broad daylight for jaywalking.
So Harold, what we gonna do, man?
What we gonna do? We gotta hook up with Charles. We gotta hook up with Charles in the Action Network. We gotta hook up with Sidney. All of us gotta come together and be one voice. I've been a voice all my life.
True.
You understand? So now we got these people here. All of you are somebody, and all of us got to come together, man, as one and call them out. Arthur Brooks done allowed us to have no chief for 9 months without a police chief, and she has not been transparent, man.
So yeah, I
not been
want to follow up with Mr. Charles. Excuse me. I will follow. I can get the contact number for anybody who wants to take this offline. We can start talking about a step-by-step plan. I think that's what we need, a step-by-step, minutia to the big picture.
Yeah. Charles, I want to thank Michael. Michael, I know that you're a U.S. attorney in Alabama, but still, man, Michael has to get a people around him that's going to support him. You understand? And take the case in Alabama, whatever problems they're having in Alabama, Michael got to bring those folks to the table, man, and say enough is enough. That's the same thing we got to do with Charles and Sidney, all of us in the PG County, those of us in DC. We got to come together as one, man. We got to get that's where we got to take this. That's where we got to go. Just like Eddie Sargent said, Eddie has been there. All of you have been there. All of us have experienced this type of things that they're doing to us, man. But we go to 1:30, and what I want to do, I want to take it back to Jackie. Jackie.
Yeah, I'm following up with what Eddie says. I think that there's a three-pronged strategy that has to be part of this, or multi-pronged, because no one perspective is going to be able to get at the problem. You've got to attack it from all sides. And in terms of legal steps, what can be done in terms of pushing the county on things that, kind of investigating the county, if you will, or the police department for a lot of their actions. It seems to me that there has to be something that they can be taken to task for. I'm just not clear on how something like that might work. Is there maybe Michael could tell us, is there an approach that can be taken on that front? We can people can agitate, they can rally, they can do a lot of things, but it's the specter of having to pay for something or pay some consequence to your reputation, or being forced to change the structure that's going to make the difference. Because let's face it, Prince George's County Police have not changed. It's still a mostly white police department. I think everybody on this call who's spent any time in the DC area knows what it's like to be stopped by a Prince George's police officer. And we all have stories of things that have happened to loved ones who have encountered the police. And so there has to be something that forces them to pay attention in a way that they haven't before, and that will force them to take some action.
Michael, you got any suggestions, Michael?
Yeah, if somebody said this earlier, you really have to tackle these problems on the local level, and that means putting pressure on the mayor and the city council, wherever you are, or the district attorney for that matter. Those officials like that, the local community has to put pressure on them. If a person think they're gonna keep getting reelected no matter what they do, they're not gonna change. They're just fine.
So Harold,
go ahead.
In reference to Jackie.
Yeah.
Jackie was making an observation of, steps to be taken. And while we are dealing with persons who are having conduct going into job spaces, police, for example, are not being vetted. They're not being skillfully trained. They are being allowed to go in with psychological conditions that are very harmful and detrimental to Black families and to humanity, period. Because you gotta recognize the times that these activities are taking place, the times that people are being killed at night, in the evening, when the community, they have the advantage of the time and when they perform these activities. And we have to look at the times to synchronize how we cut it off. Because these people, every 6 months, we gotta have a process that vets them for the conduct, for their abuses, for the accountability has to be built in, that the good officers has to hold other ones account. They know who they are, but they're not gonna come out to expose them like that. They know the conduct, they're rotten, they're filthy, but you gotta expose them all the time. We just can't have a process where we're talking about it for 10 minutes and that's it. It's got to be a continuous cycle all the time. It has to be such that it replicates the destruction of that kind of thinking and behavior. and we have to go and do think tanks. We have to do think tanks.
Yep.
And we have to discuss in think tanks plans and strategies and actions that will impact the family, the community, the young people who are being not invested in, so they are sent to jail. And families are being decimated. So we're not having these type and kind of conversations that will keep them accountable and keep them exposed. We don't have no conversation with Also Brooks or with the state's attorney's office. We don't have these kind of conversations. And taxpayers, I'm sorry, taxpayers
But
have to
hold on,
hold
yeah,
us up.
but Sidney, what did we do when Ivy was in office? We knew he didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. What did we do? We took 9, 10 people into his office to help him learn what's going on in the community. We sat down with him with his staff for a couple of hours. No follow-up. You understand? That's what we got to do, man. If these guys are rotten, man, to the core. They ain't thinking about nobody but themselves. Nanette, come on in. I know you've been sitting there for a minute. Nanette, come on back in. Come on, baby.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. All that I go through, I have my own prison ministry where I feel as though I'm by myself fighting for those men, those young men who have been arrested for the most stupidest reasons. And the last time I checked, you can't be arrested and jailed for 10 years for debt. So we have people in South Carolina that are being arrested because they were helping somebody else, I guess, deal with their foreclosure issues, whatever help that they were able to do, which was write letters and file documents into their court cases. I have a DC young man who's locked up, and he was set up by one of the investigators, one of the officers. He was told where he was going to be, and by I guess what do you call them? The persons that they don't give their information, but he had received information that this young man was going to be at this apartment building, and he was paying the rent for the apartment, and there was no evidence that the apartment belonged to him. But yet inside the apartment were weapons and drugs. So he came back outside and sat on the steps, and they waited for him to get in his car. And when he got in his car, that's when they followed him around the corner. And so after that, they arrested him because he had a weapon in his car, but he had not hurt anyone, he had not injured anyone, and there was no one that he had harmed. The injured party, if there was one, he wasn't allowed to ask who was the injured party. The prosecutor spoke up in the courtroom and said, no one that they know of, and that's on the record. He hadn't injured anyone. So there are a lot of things that are happening inside prisons in Pennsylvania. There are guards that are conjuring up, I would say, things that they said that the inmate did, and several inmates are willing to step up and be witnesses to say, no, he did not do that. And yet they throw you in the hole for 3 months, and you don't get any privileges. All your privileges are taken away. So there's a lot of brutality going on in so many different areas that it does need to be addressed. What's happening with the foreclosures is brutal. So I don't know if you want me to go any further, but I'll wait until you tell me to.
Hold on that. Charles,
Okay.
I want to go back to Charles. Now, we got to understand, and I know that Michael understands this too, that Trump put 200 federal judges on the bench. So now we're talking about trying to overcome the police department, but the criminal justice system is stacked against us. He put 200 federal judges white judges on the bench. So that's why this program is Justice and Just Us. So Charles, those are the kind of things that you will be up against. You know, I mean, as far as, you know, we're dealing with some nickel and dime politicians. That's the bottom line. They don't even know how to steal. You understand? All they do is hurt their people. So unless we get together and like my man Eddie Sargent was saying, for us, you know, just not get on this show and talk, but come together, man. Charles, that's the important role that you're going to have to be playing in the community.
We like right now, this is our this is our perspective. I heard somebody say they grassroots. This is what we are. Last night I was on a panel with former Black Panthers that was around when Fred Hampton was around, and they was reflecting on the life of Fred Hampton. And this is what they say. Say it's hard to be an organizer. Say organizing is hard. Say that and the consequences that come from. But this is what the John Lewis National Action Network is doing. We getting ready to open up our membership. We getting ready to go into communities. We getting ready to go into the depressed communities. We getting ready to mobilize them people, educate them people about what their rights are, about budget equity. We getting ready to get them and put them on point about this is y'all responsibility. Then once we get them, we're gonna have a series of meetings with the communities, a series of activities going on with the communities. Once we can get them aware of the Also Brooks, once we can get them aware of the Hawkins, once we can get them aware of all these bootlicking, spineless individuals that's getting elected, once we can make them aware of it, we're gonna do the report card. We're gonna do the report card. The report card gonna indict them. We're not indict them. What they not doing is gonna indict them. So right now, just like the sister was talking about prison, you got massive amount of people dying in prison from COVID. Ain't nobody saying nothing about it. Hogan ain't saying, look, Hogan got to put a stop on that. So you got people dying in prison from COVID, ain't nobody saying about it. But in terms of your answer, to answer your question, one, we recognize that Trump did that, and that we might as well look as far as the criminal justice system is concerned, we might forget that. Right now, our only choice that we had when the brother was saying, what can we do? We got to organize our communities to empower them to do something about this. And that's where we at. We're in the process of organizing our communities.
Okay. Lawrence Lucas, I want you to read that letter. I'm coming back to you, Juanita. We got a half hour. Lawrence Lucas has been fighting out here in the fight, man, with these farmers. We've had him on here several times with the farmers. And Lawrence, bring us up to date where the Black farmers are today. Unmute yourself.
I'm coming, here I come. What I want to say is, I think that what you all are saying, I think accountability across the board has to be put into place.
Yes.
And I've been working with Black farmers and USDA ever since 1977. What we've got now, I sent a letter. I'm not going to read the letter, but I'll give in essence what I sent. I sent a letter that went out on the 5th of March, and it went to Congressman David Scott of Georgia. And it specifically deals with the coalition's concern and the Justice for Black Farmers concern for what is going on at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I found it important to mention that because I think that politicians have a tendency to take a look at the problem only in their state. So I had to write a letter to set the record straight that this is a problem, just like you have a police problem. That's not the problems that you're having in the police in PG County is across the country. And I was trying to make sure that the USDA Coalition of Minority Employees informed the congressman as to the gravity and the pain and suffering of farmers. We also came up and indicated to him the history that we've had with Elizabeth Warren, the history we've had with Bernie Sanders, the history we've had with Bloomberg when they were running for president. and also make sure that he understands that addressing the problem at USDA has to be a systemic one. When you talk about equity, I don't use the word equity, I use racism in place of that. And I talked about how important that the lawyers at the Department of Agriculture not control the process. I also talked about the importance of the Warnock relief bill, as well as the Justice for Black Farmer Act. And that bill was passed in the Senate with $25 billion. And I'll tell you what those $5 billion is if we have time.
We don't have the time. We don't have the time.
In the letter, I made it very clear that what you all are doing here and what we did, we brought in people that were looking at the problem, and a documentary is now on the street about the Justice for Black Farmers and what the farmers have suffered. And then we have Tracy McCurdy that works with Black Belt down in Georgia and Arkansas and Alabama, identifying the problem. And then we have a book called, which deals with systemic land theft. So these are some of the kinds of things that he needed to understand before he starts making decisions to eliminate or not make sure that he understands that there are people out there that are suffering, and it's not isolated to Georgia. When he has a hearing on this problem, and he's having one on the 25th, interesting enough, the people who are responsible for the Justice for Black Farmer Act and for the bill that was just passed with $5 billion, none of those people have been invited to that hearing. And I'm trying to make him understand that we've had, and this is what the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the system does. They start having listening sessions. They still talk about programs that don't work. We've investigated and looked at this problem ever since the DJ Miller report, the Crat and Crit report, and all these reports, GAO report, Inspector General report, Harvard report, all these reports. And what they do is they take them and put them in a corner. But in all those reports, and you all have had the same problem. The problem is that you identify the problem and you develop the solution. And don't spend your time talking about the problem, spend your time talking about the solutions. Now, that's what I have put at the hands of the new incoming chairman of the House Ag Committee. Now, let me make one thing clear. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because our leaders in Washington and around the country, and those organizations that say they care about the discrimination, the racism, the sexism, women being raped, women being assaulted, women being denied opportunity, women being harassed. We have to make sure that this new secretary that's put in by Biden, his foot is held to the fire. Now, I'm talking about accountability. So that is what we're doing. But the point is, the work that has to be done is now, and Harold, I'm gonna end. What has to be done is that we have to hold them accountable, and we have to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do and not what they wish to do. We're talking about oversight and implementation, and that's where we are. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Juanita, you know, I wanted you all to hear that because it's about solutions. There's no doubt about it. It's got to be solution driven if we're going to make any progress, man, in our communities where we are. Juanita, you wanted to say something? Make it real quick, please. Go ahead.
And I just wanted to say that, you know, you need some trouble. People need to get loud. You know, I don't know if it's organized, unorganized, I don't care what it is, but I don't have no problem showing up, Angela, or also Brooke, or anybody else's office saying, what the fuck are you doing?
Let's stir it up.
So I'm just saying that's for me. That you know, you can call it hood, you know, Val, you have always lived in your truth. This is one of the things that I admire and respect about you. We can do the good presentation or we can do the bad presentation. But at the end of the day, if we're saying the same thing in two different lights, so be that means we're going to gather two different groups of folks. But at the end of the day, you know, shit's enough is enough is enough is enough is enough. And we have enough education here. We have enough people right here on just this panel. Smart, intelligent, experienced, world. You know, I'm saying don't play down all that you have to offer. You just got to fit it in where you can fit it in. But at the end of the day, my best gift, the gift that I bring, is I ain't got no problem making some noise. But I want to make noise with good information. Don't give me no shady stuff and have me stand up there looking like a fool. So I'm gonna do my legwork. You give it to me, I'm gonna do my legwork. I'm gonna find out how accurate it is. And I understand that there's all these things out here in the world that makes people back up. Oh, you know, you're gonna get sued for it. Man, I don't care nothing about none of that.
Yeah. Well, Juanita, I understand exactly where you're coming from, because they've always said I'm too confrontational. CJ, come on in here, CJ. Follow up on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I agree with a lot that's said. I think it really needs to be some thoughts about disrupting where a lot of the corruption comes from, and the corruption comes from corporate interests and money that buy the politicians. That's why we can't get reform. That's why policies that are incredibly popular, like stimulus checks and things like that, they can't seem to get done in DC and things. But when there's a military bill, when there's a Wall Street bailout to be had, it passes overnight with incredible margins. And this is not just Senate politicians, but down to the local levels as well. We're talking about PG County. We're talking about a lot of sketchy things where people get into office and all of a sudden they start acting and voting real differently, which is why I think the report card, also excellent idea. That needs to be of the forefront. We need to make that as mainstream as Uber, as anything, you know, like as an app, the people to be able to hold politicians accountable based off of their votes and their records, not off of what they say or off of their personalities, but based off of their records alone, not what they promised to do, not what they plan to do, not what they could do if the Senate parliamentarian let them or something. Like, no, what is done and what is not done, straight up. It's not a popularity contest. It needs to be about policy. And another way to disrupt the money is a general strike, because a lot of these corporations profit off of a lot of these terrible decisions that work against the public and the community and in the nation at large. So if you disrupt the corporations that are buying the politicians, that is a way to disrupt the system. The NBA players flirted with doing that last during the bubble. When the Milwaukee Bucks refused to play that game, corporate sponsors nearly crapped their pants. They didn't know what to do. There was panic ensued everywhere. And then they got a call from Obama that told them, you know, settle down, don't stir that much trouble, you know, play the game. But like, we need to stir up the trouble. That's, as was said, that needs to be, we can't be afraid to wield power as people the way the politicians shamelessly wield power for their own interests.
Okay, we've run out of time, but I'm gonna go around the horn and I'm gonna give everybody a minute. Sidney, that means you a minute. We gotta take a minute. We gotta run out of time. I want everybody to close out the show because Jackie has a commentary that I want her to do. So I'm gonna skip over Jackie. I'm gonna go to Ed Sargent. Ed, take it up and kind of close it out, man, within a minute.
Freedom is not given, it's taken.
That's good. Okay. Linda? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was researching. I saw somebody said something about the app, and I was looking. They do have an app that's called Pulled Over. So I didn't even hear what you were saying.
Yeah, we're closing it out, so I wanted to give you a minute to close out what you got to say about what's happening as far as this program is concerned.
I like this. I a long-time 20-year resident of Glenarden, where there are a lot of young folks there that I was the mom's house in the community. So where these kids had to go to church, they had to learn how to clean up and different things like that. I would want to see more younger folks on a live like this. Right. Get them involved. I don't know if you guys see my grandson, he's only 7. He keeps coming in here looking and he want to know what we talking about. And he's only 7.
Right.
Young
I've been telling CJ to bring some of his boys on. Taifa, come on, baby.
Young Black
Taifa.
males need to be involved.
Yeah, Taifa.
All right, so I would just say power concedes nothing without a demand. And hopefully you'll be able to reschedule Peter Bailey at some point too.
Yeah, I missed Peter. I don't know what happened there. Okay, Michael. Michael, take a minute, Michael.
Well, as y'all know, today is the 56th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday March.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Going on in Selma. And the president did do an act to strengthen the Voting Rights Act. And hopefully the bill that just passed the House will pass the Senate, but you all know how that goes with the Senate. So anyway, I just remind everybody what's going on today. You can watch a lot of the stuff going on virtually. And we don't, because the whole bottom line with the police and others is the local politicians have to be held accountable. They will put the pressure on the police department and other folks if they think they're going to get voted out off.
Right. Jackie, I know you got to slip out. How about you was coming with your commentary talking about Vernon Jordan?
Yeah, losing Vernon Jordan was a real knock. He was someone who had connections all over the place. And when in this conversation we had today, I thought about somebody like Vernon, who knew how to get to the movers and shakers, who had done the research. He knew what their weak points were. He knew how to make things happen and appear not to trouble the water as he went along. He was only in his 30s when he became the head of the executive director of the Urban League. And he learned from watching what the powerful did and learned how to emulate their tactics to further the cause of civil rights. And so we need somebody like him to aid the cause. And I think there are a number of people who were his mentees over the years who would be good people to get in touch with. Somebody like the head of the Ford Foundation, what is his name? Daryl, I've forgotten, but there are a number of people he took aside, he took under wing and helped develop, and we need to find them and solicit them, their help in furthering the cause, because his loss is a big hit for our community, but he also left a legacy that should be honored.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Charles, you got a minute, Charles.
Organize, organize, organize.
My man. Okay. Nanette?
I just wanted to say that Juanita, Edward, you did speak earlier about coming together. And I'm thinking that with a group this size, we should be able to put together like a prison police department. When I say department, I mean committee underneath this committee, like a subcommittee underneath the group, that we work on specifics. The admin department, the people who are good at writing letters and expressing themselves through their ink pen, admin department. I don't know if you have a contact list out already for everybody so that we can talk before we have our meetings. We may have things that we have come across that we want to bring to Edward's attention or Lawrence's attention or Maggie's attention to say that this is what I found. Which department do you think we should send that to so that we can start working on it? Once you put a group of people together to work on a specific thing, it gets a little bit more closer to coming into fruition so that it can begin. I was on a committee or team, and it was the prison ministry and the foreclosure ministry. What we did was we put together in 12 days a federal package to go out for all of those people that were in this group to submit to the court, the federal system, and we filed that package on every person. It had everything in there that tells you that every move you made was wrong. everything was against the law, that everything was incorrect. So that package went to the federal courts on all those people. So I just wanted to say that particular department came together and put that package together, and it went out within 12 days after we put that group together. So I just wanted to say it might be another way to say what Edward was saying, that let's come together and work on these things. And whoever has a lot more free time, a lot of mine is fighting back to keep senior citizens from getting put on the getting evicted. It's just a lot. I wish I had more time to tell you everything that's going on. Somebody might be able to assist me. I got an 81-year-old, a 71-year-old, they're getting ready to evict. But I guess that's for another show.
Yeah. Okay, Maggie.
Amen to everything. I'm not going to take even a whole minute. I know one of the problems with the prison ministry. By the way, I was brought up in Leavenworth, Kansas, which is a real prison town, and there was always that involvement with the prisons. And even with the church that I go to now, the problem is now we have COVID-19 and we can't go in and visit the prisons that we did. And, you know, like we were going like regularly every Sunday. We cannot do that right now. And so we can't watch over as much as we could because we were inside and being able to talk to them personally. But I grew up being involved, and it was never just a single county or a single anything. It was lifting everybody up at the same time. And that's the way it has to be done. And, you know, we did it the old fashioned way. We did sit-ins. We'd go and sit at somebody's door until they opened the door and talked to us. And that we didn't have to bust anything up. And I still feel like what Charles is saying, let's get together and make a plan. What Annette is saying, let's get together and make a plan. It's all of these people going out and saying, it's time to make a plan, but let's sit down and really make one that everyone can follow. And it's good for, if it's good for Prince George's County, it's good for every county in the country.
Sidney. Sidney.
Hey.
Yeah, got a minute.
This is very encouraging and unique that we have this kind of discussion. The thing to do is to find a think tank so that we can commit to 72 hours planning, strategy, and moving out. You know, we can commit to these hours of a think tank. There are always think tanks that have been described to put us in positions where we had to fight one another, we had to be neglected. The advancement of racism through think tank, but we don't have that kind of system set in place where we think. We have in Angela also Brooks. They don't think about think tanks or bringing people together. We have to make them do it. We have to make them do it. If we don't make them do it, we continue to acquiesce in the same destruction. So I hope that you all will get Charles' information. Maggie, I love you. You've been in Kansas. We got work to do in Kansas. There are people.
Amen.
I want you, Maggie, to be in touch with Charles because we are working with brothers who have been shipped without seeing their families. They've been shipped to Kansas. And so you know the system in Kansas. So I would just say, Harold,
yeah,
let's continue to be persistent and let's look at this from a think tank position as the man was talking about, so we can roll out the strategy every month. We'll roll out. Charles talked about a 10-point plan. Every month we will make this work.
Okay. All right. CJ.
Yeah, just to respond to your point earlier, I have tried to get some more younger people on the show, but it is incredibly hard to convince people in my generation to get on a show like this because they're so convinced that the system is so incredibly corrupt and broken that there's nothing that can really be done. A lot of people have just thrown their hands up, and to think they see the deep corruption in both the Democratic and Republican Party, see that there's no way to go, see that there have been people like you guys who have been fighting for decades, for generations, fighting the good fight, and we're still fighting this fight. And
Yeah.
like to try to keep the fire and the inspiration going is part of the challenge, and to try to convince them that yes, there is still a fight. Like we got to go down fighting if you're going to go down. You can't just lay down and accept the corruption, accept the police killing us with impunity. We can't just accept the
Right.
rapid income inequality that's happening over COVID. Billionaires have profited more than they've ever profited over the pandemic, while the economy has crashed and collapsed for the rest of us. Like we
Yeah.
can't just accept that as acceptable. We have to keep fighting. And I'm just going to try to keep that fight going and show people that it's not hopeless.
Okay, Gary, close it out. Gary.
If you want to follow the corruption, follow the money.
That's right. That's right.
But if they ain't got no money,
and accountability.
Yeah.
Accountability is the big one. And you know what? I really would like to see, let's say, about 5 or 6 members of CJ's generation on this show. I'm going to work with CJ and see if we can get that, because I bet you they will enlighten us with that perspective. Because, you know, I admit that I probably have some blind spots, and I'm in the struggle. So I probably have some blind spots. So that's what I'll do. I'll yield my time, Mr. Speaker, and we can work together for a contact list if required.
Yeah.
And I have two grandsons, CJ, too.
All right, there you go. Okay, Nanette, we'll be in touch. I just want to say this, in going out of here, I lost a guy that was in the struggle with me. I was writing a piece on when officer friendly is no longer officer friendly. You can go on blackmenamerica.com and read that. And I was putting him in the story, and I decided that I need to go find some more information on him, high school he graduated from. This guy was an FBI undercover agent that was in the streets with me in 1968. When I had nothing but a police badge for 3 nights and 3 days. I let Tillman O'Brien convince me to take a police badge to get me through the military and police barricades, because he thought I could make a difference. And I met this brother by the name of Wayne Davis. He was an undercover FBI agent. Man, we became fast friends. And he was the one responsible for me telling Marion Berry to back up, man, chill out. We coming after you. But as you know, Marion always thinking ahead of everybody else. I got everything undercover. And of course, several months later, the bitch set him up. Well, Wayne Davis went on to become the second Black agent to sit at a supervisor at a desk at headquarters downtown, the second. Then he went on up to Detroit to be FBI agent in charge in the Detroit office. And I hooked up with him in Detroit, and he took me on a tour of everything, you know. And then I took him to the Tommy Hearns Papino Cuevas fight, where Tommy won his first welterweight bout, right? So Wayne was a very special guy. So now I'm writing, and he's been on my show a couple of times for Black History Month, and I'm writing this thing up. He done retired, and I said, let me find out where school Wayne, and what did I read? Wayne Davis passed last year at age 81. I lost my breath for about 10 seconds. You understand? But he was a great human being, a great guy who looked out for the plight of his people, man. And now he's gone. So in this fight, I'm not only in it for my brother Earl, my brother Bobby. I'm in this fight for Wayne Davis, because I know there are good cops out there, man, that care about us. But we got to get rid of all this riffraff that think that they deserve. They think they're part of white privilege. They think they're part of white privilege. So we got to come together, man, and say, and hook up with Charles, hook up with Eddie, hook up with everybody here, and let's get a think tank. Let's come up with solutions. And I want to thank you guys. This is always educational for me. I'm learning this time out. I'm still glad that I got a voice. I'm still glad I got people like you guys that care. But we got to make a difference. And I want you to remember this, and this is so true. You cannot soar like eagles when you're hanging out with chickens. Until next time, I'm Harold Bell.
Thank you.
Keep the bread fresh, Harold.
Stay safe. Wear your mask.
Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
Nanette.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
guys. Thank
everybody.
Lucas.
Hey,
Thank Luke.
Juanita.
Hey,
You guys have a safe week.
Here's,
God bless
the
all.
Nanette,
Hey, Maggie.
Linda. Thank
Thank
you.
you.